criminal defense attorney, Adam Konta, who was with us live from the federal courthouse for many, many weeks as that trial went on and for the verdict and understanding everything that was happening. But Adam, thank you so much for joining us. And what do you make of this latest change? Because how do you get in trouble and then it gets shortened?
Yeah, no, I think it's just two very separate issues that are easy to put together because it's sort of happening close in time. I think they're completely unrelated, though. I think he got into an incident that actually landed him in solitary confinement, which is obviously the most restrictive, the most harsh form of imprisonment that we have in our society. And then right after that, it comes out that his sentence has been reduced and reduced again. But I think that there's a very simple answer for this. One is that defendants get good time on their sentences. And so sometimes sentences just get reduced for general good credit, essentially. But this is more specific. He, as part of this whole case, he said during a sentencing, that he let sort of drugs and alcohol and excess get in the way of his life. And so he sort of established with like the ketamine and the MDMA, that drugs were at least part of what was going on here. And so when he got to Fort Dix, the prison he's in New Jersey, the federal prison he's in, he entered into what's called RDAP, a residential drug abuse program. It's offered to many defendants in situations like this. And if you complete that program, you can get up to a year taken off your sentence. And so that hasn't necessarily been reported as what's definitely happening, but I really, really would be surprised if it's anything other than those two things. And I think the drug treatment program is the main reason why his sentence has been reduced a couple times.
Because in that type of a program with a federal sentence like that, do they have certain benchmarks or certain points you hit? Like if you do this or stay sober for this amount of time, you get this amount of time off, or participate in counseling or whatever? Like, what do you have to do to get time shaved up?
Exactly. I mean, it's not necessarily the staying sober part because they're incarcerated, so hopefully they don't have access to narcotics while they're in jail,
right,
anyway. But that's part of it. But it's it's a lot of the other stuff. It's the counseling, it's the volunteering, it's the being a model citizen while incarcerated. And although he did get into an altercation in the last couple of weeks, outside of that, maybe he's been perfect. And we really don't know what the situation was with that. I mean, the reality is he's a very famous inmate. That makes him a target for a lot of other inmates. And we don't know if he was provoked, if the other person was the main target. We don't know anything really surrounding those facts. And so if you take that kind of out as just sort of an incident that happens and you look at everything else, you have to assume that he's doing everything that the program is requiring. And a lot of that is just, quite honestly, just self-reflective work that you would see in a lot of drug treatment programs on the outside, but they're just offered this benefit while they're incarcerated.
Okay, so there's also this kind of ongoing appeal and then the denial and then the appeal of the denial. I reached out to his representative and I said, what's your response to the story that has been out about the time being taken down, and what's the status of this appeal? And the spokesperson for Diddy told me, quote, "At this point, we do not have the necessary information to respond with any clarity," end quote. Can you translate that for us?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to appeal. They're trying to appeal the sentence because he was really only convicted of two things, right? The two counts of engaging in prostitution that crossed state lines, engaging in transportation for the purposes of prostitution, meaning that they found that prostitutes were driven across state lines for these freak-offs. The main point of the appeal is that the defense team says that the judge, in sentencing him to 50 months, which is a high sentence for those two charges, that sentencing him to those 50 months, the judge relied on these claims that these workers were forced, coerced, and really did all these things against their will. And that really wasn't what he was found guilty of. And that wasn't really the evidence that was presented at trial that the jury relied on in order to get to their verdict. And so, the judge is essentially saying, listen, I'm allowed to rely on relevant conduct. Even if he was acquitted, I can rely on relevant conduct to take that into consideration when I sentence. And so the judge is essentially saying, I think he did bad things, and even if he wasn't convicted of them, I can still take that into consideration when I'm sentencing someone for these crimes. And the courts have upheld the judge's right to do that. And so what they have to do is overcome the judge's presumption and authority to take this sort of outside conduct into consideration when handing down his sentence. And then they have to show that the sentence is so above and beyond what a normal person would get in this situation that it's unconstitutional, unfair, and that he should be reduced even further. I think the likelihood of that succeeding is really, really low, but that's the bar that they have to kind of get over.
But Adam, is it from your experience and from your knowledge of the way the system works, was this an unusually harsh sentence for that conviction?
Yes. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, I have no hesitation in saying yes. I think this was, I mean, his legal team would say this is about 4 times what a normal person would get, but it just is, you know. I think there's this narrative out there that's been around for a long time that celebrities get special treatment. And, you know, we all remember Mike Vick, the quarterback, the very famous quarterback,
right,
for the Atlanta Falcons, Virginia Tech, and he went to prison for a dogfighting. Now, dogfighting, I personally find disgusting, reprehensible, and all the rest of the adjectives that one would throw in here. But the point is that if you or I did it, that we would get probation. Without a shadow of a doubt, we would have gotten probation. But they put him in jail, derailed his entire career because they wanted to prove a point. Here in New York City, the same thing happened to Plaxico Burress when he shot himself in the leg at that club. You know, he had an illegal firearm, even though it was registered in Florida. The gun went off when it shouldn't have. But if it was just a regular citizen, I think the odds of getting that type of jail time, again, are pretty low. And I think that that's what we're looking at here. This is such a famous person, and everyone kind of, whether you think he was guilty or innocent of the charges that he was initially charged with, it gave a lot of people the ick factor, to just put it plain. You know, people heard the conduct and it made them uncomfortable. And it sounded like he was, at the very least, a pretty bad guy to Cassie and those around him, pretty controlling in his business relationships. And so this wasn't a guy, we just know so much about him, and the judge knows so much about him. And I think because of that, all of that together helped give this judge, I believe, the reasoning to put down what was a pretty harsh sentence for ultimately transporting people across state lines for what could have been interpreted as consensual prostitution.
But this is what people say, you know, what people say on the streets. They're like, well, was he convicted for crimes that he was sentenced for crimes that he wasn't convicted of, basically. But do you think with this appeals process, I guess it's the appeal of the appeal, now that can that go on indefinitely? They made a big case a while back to try to, you know, make exactly this point that you're outlining for us right now. And you think there's like no chance, very little chance that the court's going to come out and go, wait a minute, okay, he can go out, you know, 2 more months and he's out or whatever?
Yeah, I think that's pretty unlikely. It's not impossible. It's not outside the court's authority if they chose to do that. But I think it's unlikely. Then what their options would really be is to try to get the Supreme Court to take a look at it if they thought that this was such an egregious overreach by the judiciary. But I doubt that we'll get to that step. I mean, he also is getting closer. I mean, we just said now his release date now after the latest reduction is scheduled for January 24th of 2028. So we're talking about 18 months.
Right.
The legal system just doesn't work that fast to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
So ultimately, what he would be doing is try to sort of do an appeal to clear his name and reputation more than functionally reducing his sentence, I think.
Right. Exactly. And anything we should be watching for in this, or do you think it's just gonna play out, or maybe they'll time out the clock on it, the feds, the court?
Well, I think we're going to keep beating the same drum because it's the one that the public will certainly resonate with. If nothing else, I mean, listen, Diddy has surrounded himself with very smart people. He's got really smart attorneys. He also has really, really savvy media. And maybe the goal isn't the goal here. You know what I mean? Like maybe the goal here isn't to actually get him out early, but it's to keep saying in public he's being punished for crimes he was acquitted of.
Right.
You know, that's how you build a comeback story. That's how you build an underdog. That's how you get the public maybe back on your side. I have no idea if that's anyone's goal here, but that's certainly at least a possibility of what their ulterior sort of motivations for kind of keep doing this would be, even if they think that the reduction of a prison sentence is unlikely.
No, absolutely. Well, Adam Konta, thank you so much for being with us again. We appreciate it, breaking this all down for us, getting us up to date. Adam Konta, criminal defense attorney.